Well, the Biden administration is walking a tightrope on the issue of humanitarian pauses in Gaza after vetoing a United Nations resolution that would have paved the way for more aid into Gaza. The White House has shifted its position to call for more aid into Gaza. The White House says 66 trucks of humanitarian assistance entered Gaza in the last 24 hours. Dozens of more trucks are expected to be cleared for deliveries. The national security spokesperson John Kerry, however, admits that the aid deliveries so far are just a fraction of what is needed.
Without getting into this specific moment that we're in right now or litigating this from the White House podium, we do believe that humanitarian pauses could be of value, but they have to be there has to be credible support on both sides here for where to do it, when to do it, for how long to do it, and for what purpose. And we're continuing to work with partners in the region, and including those who have a direct line of communication with Hamas to see if that's possible.
Earlier at the United Nations, Russia and China vetoed a US-drafted Security Council resolution calling for pauses in hostilities to allow for food, water and medicine to be delivered to the Palestinian civilians. Russia's rival proposal advocated a wider ceasefire but failed to win the minimum votes. Vetoing Russia's proposal, the United States accused it of dividing the Security Council.
It is disappointing that Russia would rather try and score political points and further divide this council than address the current urgent needs of Israelis and Palestinians. We all see that Russia is doing nothing to engage any of the relevant parties or support diplomatic efforts, including by the United Nations, to get more aid into Gaza.
Even as the United States is asking Israel to show restraint, it is on the same time moving its warships and aircraft closer to the country in order to prevent a wider regional conflict. Israel, on the other hand, is rejecting calls for a ceasefire stand that is triggering massive opposition for the United States domestically. And according to reports, Muslim and Arab American groups are threatening to withhold donations and votes for President Joe Biden's 2024 re-election bid unless he takes steps to secure Gaza a ceasefire. Earlier, newly elected House Speaker Mike Johnson introduced a bill to provide $14.3 billion in aid to Israel by cutting funding for the Internal Revenue Service, setting up a showdown with Democrats. The House bill did not mention humanitarian aid for Gaza, however.
You've been breaking your neck the last couple of years to deal with this overall issue of anti-Semitism. And I know many of you are personally impacted by what's happened in Israel.
We're standing up for our interests and values, not shrinking back, not in the face of Russia's aggression.
In the air, they also denounced top U.S. officials for backing what they called genocide in Gaza. The Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, and the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, testified before the Senate Appropriations Committee on Biden's request for $106 billion to fund Ukraine, Israel, and the U.S. border security. And for more on this, correspondent Susan Tehrani sent us this report from New York.
The White House on Monday agreed with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that a ceasefire would only play into Hamas's hands. However, the Biden administration in recent days has been warming up to a humanitarian pause, mostly to get aid to Gaza, but also because while the majority of Americans support Israel's right to defend itself and also its war against Hamas, there are deep divisions among Democrats on Capitol Hill, not to mention a drop in Biden's poll numbers among Democrat voters. Less than 20% of Democrat voters now say they'll vote for Biden again in 2024 because of his unwavering support for Israel. The Democrats in Congress are now divided into two camps as well, those that are staunch supporters of Israel and those that are on the left and are vocally pro-Palestinian. It's also important to note that the American public, well, as I mentioned, the majority do support America's support for Israel. The American public is also very impatient when it comes to wars and U.S. involvement. While right now that support is there, it's unclear as the war drags on and the casualties on both sides increase, how this sentiment may change. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.